I'm Betty Baye, and welcome to another episode of the G3, Good Grief, Good Gossip, Good God. My co-hosts, Letty Johnson and Gwen Brashear. And our guest today is Dr. Wayne Tuckson. We're going to talk about violence against black women.
Let's get scratching.
Well, as you said, I'm Wayne Tuckson. I'm a colon and rectal surgeon, but I'm very much interested in health policy, particularly as it impacts African Americans, and this allows me to get into many other areas. Violence, it's not just violence is violence. Violence is a public health issue. Yes. It affects our mental status. Just think about it. Let me just say this. There was a guy did a very interesting study. He took men and women in a room, and he had a whiteboard. And he asked the men, okay, tell me all the things you do, just to the men, tell me all the things that you do to protect yourself from sexual assault. Well, of course, there was laughter, giggling around, and they said, oh, you can't, come on, nothing.
Right.
Nothing went on the board. So he turned the whiteboard over. He said, okay, women, what are all the things you do to protect yourself from sexual violence? Almost every woman's hands went up. I carry my keys in my hand so I can straight. I carry mace. If I see men coming at me on one side of the street, I cross the street. I don't like to go out. I mean, it just filled up. Just think, and I'm sure everybody, your viewers are going to have their own things they're going to report. This is the trauma that a woman has to go through. Now just imagine, you're a woman, and I'm just looking at it from the outside, so you got to worry about, how am I going to get home? If I get home, what's the situation going to be like at home? What's our financial situation? I got the stress of that. I got the kids. What is their thing? Are they doing well in school? Are they going to be at home? Can I provide care for them? Am I going to have the food for them? How am I going to get transportation back and forth? Then if there's a guy who's abusing them because they're trying to have some semblance of a life, am I going to be abused by this guy? There's no question why black women are having some of the issues that they have. So you're starting to see this domino effect.
What if we lived in a world where at least one black woman or girl would lose her life every 6 hours? The truth of the matter is, we already live in that world, according to a recent study which shows that in the United States, one black woman or girl was killed in 2020 on average every 6 hours. This statistic sheds light on a topic that is often skipped in both black and white conversations. Skipped on one hand because of their race, and on the other because of their gender. Invisible. An entire generation with unseen problems and unaddressed emotional trauma. So today, G3 is giving voice to the issue of violence against women, black women, how it has impacted our self-esteem, our family and friends, our emotional and mental health, heading to what we hope is healing.
And I got to tell you, I really enjoyed that segment. If I can go through just a few little statistics.
Absolutely.
It's this: more than 4 in 10 black women experience physical violence from an intimate partner during their lifetime. From an intimate partner. This is far greater than any other ethnic.
I mean, your boyfriend.
Your husband, or like you're always saying, somebody even at work.
Yes.
You know, but the intimate, obviously, not necessarily work, but that person who's close to you.
Right,
Black women also experience significantly higher rates of psychological abuse. This is where you get to the workplace thing, including humiliation, insults, name calling, coercive control than women. Just think about some of the things men say to women in music or otherwise. I mean, some of the things you all were talking about. And yet how black men coming to the aid of black men to protect them. Yet you're not getting the same thing back. Sexual violence affects black women at higher rates. 20% of African American women raped.
Wow.
20%. And that's probably going to be a low number, to be honest with you, because just think how often rape isn't even reported.
Right.
And that's a
Yes.
problem.
Yeah.
And then, unfortunately, black women increased risk of being killed at the hands of a man. Now, how does some of this stuff manifest itself? Well, let's go all the way back. Young black girls in school, they act up a little bit. They're perceived as being disorderly, uncontrolled. So they get put out of school. Get put out of school, they're not getting the education. Because they're not getting the education, handcuffed, taking them to jail. What happens when a woman gets taken to jail? Well, when that happens, women who are coming out of prison have problems as far as getting jobs. They can't get education. And they suffer physical abuse. And of course, they can't even vote and get out there and protect themselves
And they
as far
don't
as
get the
that.
support when they're in there.
Right.
Not getting the support.
Or when
and
they
so
come out.
what happens is, and this black women are vulnerable at this point. So in 2015, there was a Violence Policy Center studied black women, found that they were 2.5 times more likely to be murdered than white women were.
My goodness.
And it's just to the point that you're all talking about. It's almost as though this is not being reported.
So what is it? Why do we think that black women are more susceptible to violence, right? And the impacts of the violence that occurs in our community?
I think we're more susceptible because we're invisible to a great extent. And so sometimes when we get beat up and we show up, you don't see it. You know what I'm saying? We go to church every Sunday, and I always think about who's coming into church this Sunday. We're at the door greeting. We don't know what happened the night before. And a lot of us grew up in that culture of don't ask, don't tell.
Absolutely.
What goes on in this house stays in this house.
I was going to say just that, that, family business is family business. Black women were designed to take the brunt of the entire world and put it on our shoulders and still make things happen, make things work, never to complain, but whatever is happening in our lives, we still carry on. So even, and more than that, we take care of ourselves last. So even if there's someone that is not treating us fairly or doing right by us, we still have a tendency to want to protect them, to want to see the good in them, to want to know that there is potential in this person because I care about them. And we care so deeply that we forget sometimes to care about ourselves.
I remember my daddy used to always say to me, you really do fall in love with potential. And you can be fine. You know what I'm saying?
Yes,
He's
yes.
an artist.
Coming up later on G3.
So this week, I dealt with a situation working with a particular organization where I felt like a number of times that I had been gaslighted, basically manipulated and made to be thought that there.
We'll be right back with good grief, good gossip, good God.
So, my response, initially was,
Hi, this is Betty Baye, and on the next episode of the G3, we're going to be talking about hair.
Next week on G3.
the Crowned Act is creating a respectful and open world for natural hair.
I got my hair, and I was like, well, I think we need to kind of change that because we are hair. It's really my direct link to my ancestors.
Mm.
Yes.
Black women's hair is 3.4 times more likely to be perceived as unprofessional. And I'm going to pose a question for all of us to kind of talk about what does our hair mean to us as Black women.
This notion of the strong Black woman. You know, we don't hurt the same way. We don't cry the same way. And there's a lot of, burden, like you said, that we've carried. And I think some of this is a holdover from back in slavery. We try to protect our sons. I mean, you see these women on TV all the time, when their children have been murdered. And you see the sister and she's there and there's not a man there with her to support her. Or you see the basketball players. I want to thank my mom. I want to thank my mom, because your mom went to all the games and stuff. And I think that for many of us, we are defensive about Black men.
Yes.
Because we know good Black men. And so to talk about one is to sort of put a stigma on all of them as if none of them are worth anything.
And you hit on something really good, especially with the climate right now and with how our Black men, African American men, are being treated by the police. Do you really want to be that woman that calls the police and something happens to a person that you love? Things like that go into your mind. It's the stigma of the society in which we live in and all the things that happen to our Black men, and that you don't want to be one more thing that causes trauma
I think it
to someone that you love.
And I think too, it starts early. Like I noticed, like some of the young sisters, I sort of noticed them. On the one hand, they're liberated. They're even more liberated than my generation. But on the other hand, they're still playing the same games. They're still looking for someone that doesn't love them. They still want to be loved in some way. And I used to always joke, because I told you, my father told me that I was so beautiful that I didn't understand when people didn't think that I wasn't. So I was like, good Lord. Really? But if you don't have that good self-esteem, and people talk about fathers and sons, but let me tell you about fathers and daughters. Men have a tremendous impact on their daughters.
Yes,
because they know men. And my dad would tell me things, to help me. He said, if you want to meet a boy, learn about baseball or something, what they're doing. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
So the thing is that men have an impact on their daughters. And I think that when daughters see their mothers treated a certain way, they, it's like intergenerational. Sometimes you see, when we talk about abuse and murder, in a lot of families, you had a mother that was murdered, an aunt that was murdered, a sister that was murdered. And so some of our girls grow up thinking this is normal to be to be abused and all of that. And all of this is like this overlay of white supremacy and how we have been mentally destroyed by what we think about ourselves.
Absolutely.
And then when we do get murdered or we go missing, it's like no big deal.
No big deal. One of the things you touched on is the stigma around being abused, and which could possibly lead up to, you being harmed or murdered and things like that. So I feel like the support system is not necessarily there for African American women. Who do you turn to if you're feeling this way? With all of the things that you have in your life, all of the things that you need to take care of, who do you turn to that you don't feel would look at you a certain way or would ask questions that would make you feel like, there's a reason this is happening to you.
Yeah, like it's your fault. But that seems to be a universal thing for all women. I know that when I came to Louisville, working for the Courier Journal, one of the first stories I did was of a woman, a white woman, who was running from her husband, and she had gotten to a safe space, but she went back home to pick up a few things. And this man chased her in a car and killed her.
Lord.
In the police station, in the parking lot of the police station, and with her children and her daughter and grandchildren in the car.
My
so
goodness.
Imagine those children seeing that.
Yes.
This was a woman who got away, but she thought that he wouldn't be home, and so she's trying to go, and get a few things, and that was her mistake. And so when I think about women in general, and what happens to them, because we're not the only ones that are abused.
Oh, yes,
But we
absolutely.
have this long history of that. And I think that we are really not valued by society. And part of not being valued by society, I don't think a lot of us even value ourselves. We don't value
Yes.
ourselves. We don't think we're important.
Right.
You know?
I agree
And that's
with
that strong woman, you know, I can do everything. I can do, you know, that's why I think I always liked, you know, a bigger man. Because I always felt like, okay, mess with me now so I could be safe. You know what I'm saying? Because I can fight my own battle. But I don't want to fight. Sometimes I just want somebody to fight for me.
Yes.
And lots of times black women have nobody to fight for them.
I think it's interesting. So this week, I dealt with a situation. So, you know, in my line of work, you know, I do a lot of work around justice, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so I was working with a particular organization where I felt like a number of times throughout the negotiation and the partnership and the collaboration that I had been gaslighted, right? And so, you know, in the back of my head,
Stop for just a
Go
minute.
ahead.
Tell us what gaslighting is.
basically manipulated and made to be thought that there was something else
Okay.
or a vulnerability that was there. And so, you know, my response, you know, initially was, okay, this is the work that I'm committed to. I'm committed to being a disruptor and helping to realign people and organizations to modify their potential and their behavior through justice, diversity, equity, and inclusion, right? But in the instance of me being under this oppression, right? Because that's exactly what it was, a form of oppression. You know, it never dawned on me, well, at what point will you speak up for yourself, right? And so, you know, I really, over the weekend, I really processed what had happened and really went back through and just checked my own biases and really just did the work, right? And so the conclusion is that I needed to terminate the relationship because it was not serving me.
Right.
But, you know, thinking back on it as you all were speaking and thinking back on, you know, all that I went through emotionally over the weekend and vetting it multiple times, you know, with, you know, with my husband and family. And it was like, this is the work that you do. You call people out in regards to, you know, how they show up in community and et cetera.
Yeah.
And I never once, you know, really thought about protecting my own self. And so it's absolutely the narratives that we tell ourselves.
Yes,
Right.
indeed.
Yes.
And I think that we don't really often think about the mental health aspect of this violence.
Yes,
and even if it's not happening to us personally,
Right.
when it's happening to our girlfriends,
Yes.
Right.
when we could see it in our girlfriends.
One thing that you said, Miss Letty, you were in a business situation. So please, everyone needs to keep in mind that a person who is an abuser, who has those tendencies to harm you or manipulate you, can look like anyone. There is not a particular look.
The music department at Simmons College now offers a gospel track for its music performance degree. Our Department of Music exists to develop musical knowledge and skill. Students become beneficiaries of program features and faculty that distinguish music as both an academic and artistic discipline. Program options include brass and woodwind instruments, as well as guitar, bass, strings, piano, percussion, and voice. Your gifts will be encouraged and developed by a staff of experienced performing musicians and by the warm support of your peers. You will have frequent opportunities to perform, including vocal ensemble, gospel choir, jazz ensemble, marching band, and other ensembles, both on and off campus. Your music program can go no higher than those who lead it. Now is your time to build a strong music ministry from within. Help support passion already in your community. Help develop gifts already in your congregation. You might have the next James Cleveland in your church and don't know it. the heritage of artistic dignity found at historic black colleges and universities, the tradition of black excellence in gospel music, the calling to use your gift to turn hearts. Your journey toward obtaining a bachelor's degree in music starts now. Simmons College of Kentucky. Apply today. Become a part of the legacy.
There's no question why black women are having some of the issues that they're having. So you're starting to see this domino effect, which just leads down to the spiraling down that a lot of our African American women are
And
having.
then sometimes even it affects how women treat other women.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? Because
Yes.
if I see somebody that's, got an attitude, usually if you know the backstory, sometimes you can figure out what's going on with her.
Right.
So there are women who say, well, I don't like women. I don't want to be in nothing around
Right.
women. You know what I'm saying? And they have a whole thing about other women. But if you know the backstory, it sometimes explains it. That if you don't have any power, it's like if you're powerless at home, then you get out in public and then you
try to
become...
Well, let's
exercise
go back. Let's go
power.
back because your power was taken from you,
Yeah,
right?
right.
When we dealt with the history of slavery
Yes.
and white supremacy.
Yes.
So let's
Yeah.
be clear about that,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
We're trying to exist in a climate in which was not built for black women, okay? Was not.
Yeah.
So we need to be clear about that. So I think that that's a great point of helping people to understand what is the backstory,
Right.
right? And how do we create a lens of empathy? And ladies, I would just like to ask you all, what is it that you do to show care and compassion when it comes to black women?
I would say the first thing that I make sure that I do, no matter where I am and what I'm doing, is that I lead with kindness. I lead with compassion and understanding, and I let people be who they are. If you're having a bad day, it's okay. I'm still going to greet you with a smile. I'm still more than likely going to give you something that will allow you to maybe smile inside, even if you can't smile on the outside. And you can if you have that spirit of kindness and giving and wanting to help mankind, you can spot when someone is off a little bit. It doesn't take anything but a kind word to let someone know that you see them, that they matter, that they are important. And that's all it does. That's all it takes. It's just a kind word. So I make sure that
do
wherever
that.
I am, that I do that.
Let me tell you something. When I see a sister
Yes.
and I say, girl, that looks good.
Yes.
I don't
You're my
know whether
favorite type
she's
of
gonna
person.
Get any more smiles today, but I like to say, girlfriend, you did
Yes.
you saw that
Yes.
you took the
Yes.
time to be complimentary. And I remember when I was a greeter at church, at the door of the church, and I could see people coming up the walkway, and I could see, the anxiety,
Yes.
the tension. And I always thought, if you're going to be a greeter and you be an usher in church or something, you need to be pleasant.
Yes.
Because you don't know what that person
What that
is
person
bringing
is going
with them.
through, right.
And people ought to walk out of that situation feeling better than when they came in.
Absolutely.
So I am really complimentary of women. I have deep conversations with some of my girlfriends. And my closest friends, to try to be encouraging, because I watch for signs. And I think it's my journalism training or something.
Yes.
But I look at people when they don't know that they're being looked at. And I see couples together, and we're at a big dance, and I'm like, ooh. Because you could see them sitting at the table dressed up in gowns and stuff, and you go, when they go home, it's not going to be good.
Can I ask, I wonder, as you look at things in terms of what are some of the solutions to the problem? I
Right.
see that
Yeah,
both of them.
yeah,
yeah.
I think there's a lot that, I'm not speaking for all men, clearly, but I think one of the things that touches on a point you all said, we have to see the humanity in the
Yes.
individual.
That's
Yes.
We cannot objectify, which you go back to the thing, we are all human beings. How do we see that? I think number two, we have to go back to the basics, improve educational opportunities. Because too often, black women at an early age are being pushed down. So, you're not going to go into a STEM program.
Yeah.
You can't do
That's
math
right.
and science. Okay, yes, you can. If the movie Hidden Numbers didn't tell us anything, women can do that. I think that once we start having, women having children so they can get to the workplace, we got to have daycare. It has to be affordable daycare because it can't be a choice, my kids or work.
Right.
We got to have both. And
right.
unless you have some kind of support for that, daycare's got to come in. Then we got to talk about pay. What is it?
Pay
African American women get what, 65, 70 cents?
70 cents.
Off the dollar of what a white guy gets. And we can't have that. If you're going to do the same work, you've got to get the same pay, which is going to help bring people up. And then I think one of the more important things is equal representation. When you look around, you can talk about why we had the 45th president of the United States, the orange guy, why he went, and they wanted to blame African American women. They said women didn't come out and vote for Hillary. No, black women turned out. And in the case of Biden, it was African American women.
Yeah.
Yet the problem is, what have our elected representatives done and where don't we have more African American women?
I think that, as you said, this thing about the murders and the violence, part of it is that we live in distressed communities often, distressed families. He's distressed, she's distressed.
Family
and
secrets.
We're powerless.
Yes.
Family secrets. And we really, when we look for solutions, the solutions have to come from the institutions that we create, from the doctors that we talk to,
Yes.
from how our doctors talk to us,
Yes.
for how our teachers teach us. We need more men in the classrooms. I mean, all of these things that we can have these images of ourselves as whole people.
And
Absolutely.
and to that point, Miss Betty, I want to jump in with the good gossip because
Yes.
the good gossip is: did you know even when the sun is shining, there's always a star in the sky? Let this be a reminder that you, black woman, you are a star even when they don't see you.
Yes.
And as the song said, you don't have to be a star to be in my show.
Hey, yay! I'm
We
here for
really
it.
Thank you, Gwen. Thank you,
Yes,
baby.
absolutely. We thank you so much, Dr. Tuckson. I would like to share, G3, if you know of anyone that needs help, if you yourself need help, please do not hesitate to reach out. It's 1-800-799-7233, and that is the National Domestic Violence Hotline. Please check on your friends, check on your family members. Make sure that they understand that they have options and they do not have to live in fear.
And we thank you.